I am Chris Ryall. I'm the president, publisher, and chief creative officer at IDW.
And I'm John Barber. I'm the editor-in-chief at IDW.
Yeah, so today what we want to do, we figured we would just essentially take questions from the audience and run through some things that that are on our mind. And beyond that, you know, if we don't get to your questions today, or if you have other things beyond this panel, we are both on all the social media platforms, and IDW Publishing is, of course, available at you know, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and so you can hit up either IDW proper or John Barber and I, and we'll answer any other questions as well. So
yeah, should we have everybody start lining up around Panama? We'll give you a few minutes to get in line, and then we'll start calling everybody, starting with you.
Well, I think we can get started with the first question. Okay. So let's see. The first question is a nice softball. What upcoming IDW series are you most excited about? And my answer isn't necessarily a series, because my series answer is almost always Lock and Key, and there's some Lock and Key goings on that I'll find a way to segue into later on. But a book I'm really excited about is, we're doing a book called Redbone, a graphic novel that is it's the story of really the very first Native American rock and roll band. You've probably heard of Redbone, or at least their song "Come and Get Your Love" from the movie Guardians of the Galaxy. But the story behind the band, Pat and Lolly Vegas, who are the founders of the band and the driving force of the band, they were a band back in the 60s that they inspired the Doors. They inspired and played with Jimi Hendrix before Jimi really became Jimi. And so their story is one of kind of the burgeoning rock scene on the Sunset Strip, but also all the kind of broader issues that a Native American rock band had to contend with at the time. And we're doing a graphic novel in tandem with the creators, written by Christian Stabler and Sonia Paloni, and illustrated by an artist named Thibault Balai. And it's great. Like, it's a very interesting, very, I think, still culturally relevant and topically relevant book that delves into the history of the band that I think people will know by sound, but not necessarily by story. So that's one that I'm really excited to see come to the market.
Yeah, it looks really exciting. I have to admit, I'm really probably most excited about Canto 2, the Hollow Men coming out. I loved the first Canto series. It's the same creative team, David M. Boer and Drew Zucker, with Vittorio Astone coloring it, and Deron Bennett doing the lettering. If you didn't read the first one, it is about it's in a sort of a fantasy world. It kind of fits into the stuff that I really loved growing up. Well, and I still love a lot now. Stuff like Labyrinth or Dark Crystal, where it's a sort of a dark fantasy. It's one of those stories that's sometimes people say all ages, but this one really is. If you read it when you're a kid, I think you're going to get a certain thing out of it, and then if you read it again as an adult, you'll get a different feel to it. So it's something really, you know, like those sort of movies, the whole family can enjoy. But it's a world where everybody, all the people have had their hearts replaced by clocks, by clockwork mechanisms. And Canto has to go out and find the heart of his true love to save her. And that's the story of the first one. And this, the new story, which is going to debut in, I believe, in August. Although there's actually going to be a special before then, a one-shot special. Should be out early this summer, or sometime this summer. We'll see how things go, I guess. Probably July. But sorry, the new one takes the story in some really exciting new directions. It kind of shows where these characters can go. The art's just fantastic and adorable, and the writing is just, I don't know, it really snaps for me. It's just something that really hits exactly the sort of story I want to read.
Yeah, Canto's one of those books that, you know, we knew that it was good when we decided to publish it, of course, but just the fact that it found the audience that it did, and that people really gravitated toward it in a big way, was not only gratifying, but it's material that deserved that sort of following. And it's always exciting when a thing that you think is a finite series then leads to more stories. So yeah, that's another really good call.
Yeah, it was one. It was when we were like going through it, we had the pitch for it, and it was you know, should we do it? And it's like, well, yeah, we should do it. It's really good. It's worth having it out in the world. I don't know if anybody will read it. And yeah, people read it. A lot of people read it. It's really great.
Yeah, the bummer of this is that doing this virtually, like, people cannot they can't hear David and Drew on the panel, because if you ever get a chance to talk to David and Drew at a convention, and you will get that opportunity again at some point in the future, they're great guys. Like, they are as fun to talk to and be around in person as the content they're creating. So yeah, Canto 2, that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So the next question we had is, what's next for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics? And the answer is a lot of exciting stuff. So if you're following the Turtles ongoing, we're on issue 105 will be the next issue. When we hit issue 100, that was a massive story. You really kind of shifted the ground for where Turtles are. If you're not up to date, maybe hold your ears for 10 or 15 seconds as I get into a little bit of spoiler stuff, but I don't want to ruin too much. But basically a mutagen bomb has been set off in New York, and there's just now a ton of mutants, and people know they exist. People know there are mutants now, these mutated animals and sort of peers of the Ninja Turtles. There'd been a lot sort of hiding in the shadows over the years. We've Sophie Campbell, who's one of my absolute favorite writer artists. She's taken over writing and arting this comic with Rhonda Pattison still on colors. And her first story arcs really delved into the new mutant town that sprung up, and sort of some of the characters and some of the new things that we'll see there. And there's going to be more tension about who controls it. One of the other really big things, well, I don't know even where to go into it. There's a couple really big things. One of them is again, if you haven't been following it for a while, there's a new 5th Ninja Turtle, Jenica. That's whose shirt I'm wearing. She's just had a solo limited series, and the last issue of that will be out shortly. I think really, ideally, in a limited series, the best time to take a pause is between issues 2 and 3. So fortunately, timing worked out for us. We had a nice long pause between 2 and 3. I made that joke in an earlier panel too. So if you watched all these WonderCon panels, you've seen me reuse it.
We'll add a laugh track. It's fine.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I was hoping you're gonna come in and bail me out on that one. She's a huge addition to it. And one of the other big additions, one of the other big changes is Shredder is now sort of the mentor to the Turtles. So that's going to only add to the tension going on there in Mutant Town. And issues 106 and 107, which are the next ones, and these are all once everything starts rolling again, which it should be very shortly. Everything's by the time all the comics should be starting to roll out through June, July, and then from then on. But I think in July probably we'll have issue 106 and 107 that has Nelson Daniel stepping in to do art for a couple issues. Sophie is still plotting it, and our longtime TMNT colorist and one of the writers on she wrote the backup stories in the Jenica series. Rhonda Pattison is going to be helping out on script duties, working with Sophie on it, which is really exciting. And it's Rhonda's been, I think now the longest running person working on Turtles continuously. And another one of those people is Tom Waltz, who you might have seen on our Turtles panel with Mr. Kevin Eastman. Tom and Adam Gorin are doing a Turtles annual, so that's coming out real shortly. It's got Leatherhead, who now has Krang in his tummy. Again, spoiler, I guess if you're way behind on Turtles comics. But despite all that, despite Turtles Urban Legends, which has been reprinting the Image series from the 90s, it's finally getting to the point where we're going to be concluding that series with brand new material. I still think the most exciting thing is probably Last Ronin. I've rambled enough. Chris, you want to talk about Last Ronin at all?
Yeah, I mean, we announced Last Ronin last year at a panel, but I think it's only recently, only in the last couple of weeks, that we've really been able to talk about it and share some of the artwork and let people know a lot of the details about it. And in fact, Tom and Kevin hit it really nicely on the Turtles panel that they did. But it's essentially, so everybody knows that Kevin and Peter were initially inspired by Frank Miller's Daredevil and Batman, among many other things. But they certainly hold Frank's work on those titles in high regard. And one of the most highly regarded is that seminal Dark Knight Returns book, the high-end book that Frank did back in the day. And so decades ago, Kevin and Peter started talking about, well, what would the Dark Knight Returns version of the Ninja Turtles look like? You know, what would the Ninja Turtles future look like? And so they did a lot of development work along those lines, you know, pages and pages of development work and sketches and backgrounds and environments and all these things that sort of set this world and the story that they were really wanting to tell, and just for whatever reason never did. And so now Kevin and Peter, along with Tom Waltz and artist Andy Kuhn, have all agreed that now is the right time to do that. So they're going to be doing a book called The Last Ronin, which is very much like the Ninja Turtles Dark Knight Returns story. So it's a dark future where there's only one remaining turtle, and it'll be fun to see, you know, from the bits of artwork that people have seen and the different accoutrements that the character has on him, if people can guess which of the turtles that is, if it's even in fact a turtle that you know, that they've seen before. But just seeing those guys sort of take everything that they developed initially decades ago and applying it through, you know, their more modern storytelling techniques, and working alongside, you know, longtime modern creators like Tom and Andy, has made this really sort of special, unique thing that, you know, we're dying to talk more about. We're dying for people to see, and I think it is really going to be one of those perennial kind of books that people go back and revisit over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kevin's also doing the layouts on it, which is always exciting. You know, so he's working really close with Andy on it. And Peter, of course, Peter Laird, who co-created the Ninja Turtles with Kevin years ago. And those guys were, I mean, just on a personal level, they were really my inspiration to want to get into comics when I was young. Like that was, you know, just seeing that the two people could kind of come up with something. I kind of got into Turtles before it became this, you know, the breakfast cereal and the cartoon and stuff, like right before it though. And I was just, you know, so inspired by the story of them, by you know, just inventing something. You know, there's a little goof that you make that turns into something that people care about. And then, you know, now 36 years later, seeing all this, you know, how big it is, how many generations it's influenced, how you know, the kids that my daughter goes to school with all know these characters. And I mean, also sometimes I'll also know Kevin because he actually lives right by Chris and I.
That's kind of the crazy thing, is you live in the moment a lot when you're doing comics. You know, everything is about the next page, the next script, the next issue. And then when you sit back and have time to reflect, like, we've done over 100 issues of the main series. We're developing this new thing with him, and you know, we've been working with Kevin Eastman, you know, in our world and as friends and a colleague for a long time now. And it's never not a thrill that a guy who has brought so much enjoyment through this franchise and other things he's done to the world, that we get to work with him on this stuff, and that he's still excited about Turtles. And, you know, anybody who's ever met Kevin knows that he is by far the best ambassador for this property that there could ever be. And so he's that inspiring a creator too. So it is, you know, we try to be professional, but we're also huge fans of this stuff. So it's great to just be able to work with him and just see the ideas still pouring out of him the way that they do.
Yeah, no, when I think it was the first Comic-Con, the first San Diego Comic-Con I ever went to. I remember standing this huge line. It was kind of separate from the rest of the dealer floor. This is back before it was at the convention center, which is how old I am. Before there was a convention center, it was the old convention center. And standing in line to meet Kevin Eastman, and you know, just like that being a huge thrill, and you're meeting all the Turtles artists from that time. I think Peter wasn't there, but like Jim Lawson, Steve Levine. Sorry, I just all of a sudden forgot how to pronounce his name. But meeting Kevin was incredible. And then years later, actually being places where I'm doing signings like with Kevin, and nobody cares about me, obviously. They're all there for Kevin, but it's still like really, really pretty.
I mean, they internalize their care.
Anyway, we've got another question.
Turtles. What's that? I mean, it's great that you guys are so far asking questions that feel like setups. They just allow us to talk about the stuff we were doing. So the next one is almost as wide ranging as the Turtles question, which is, what's next for Sonic Comics, John?
Yeah. So Sonic's been a real thrill to work on. It's been great working with everybody at Sega, and we've had, if you've been following the story for quite a while now, part of it just because of the lockdown and stuff, but we've had the metal virus saga going on. It's been sort of turning everyone into metal. It's been a long-standing story, and we're finally again, not that people are. Sorry, I was saying that it made it sound like it was dragging on. That's not the case at all. In reality, more and more people are joining on all the time to read about this stuff. It's super exciting. Ian Flynn's been helming it with a host of fantastic artists like Evan Stanley, Adam Bryce Thomas, Matt Helms. Excuse me, Matt Herms. Sorry, Matt. You just telling this story, and we're kind of down to the wire now. It's the last stand of Sonic and his friends. Sonic's missing. There's a lot of questions up in the air as to how and why and what they can do to stop this. So that's been one of the most exciting, I think, stories going on for a real long time in Sonic, and it's gratifying to be close to the finish line. I know Ian's been working incredibly hard on it for a really long time. But part of it's going to be, we were going to have a Sonic annual coming out in right now. It probably should be July. That is going to kind of fill in some of the missing stories from the Metal Virus saga, and all this sort of is going to set up our biggest thing that we've done in Sonic so far. Even I think bigger than Metal Virus, which has been huge. Starting with Sonic number 33, longtime writer Ian Flynn is going to step away. He's going to be working on some other Sonic projects, and Evan Stanley is going to come in, and she'll be writing and drawing Sonic, starting with 33, and she'll be the new regular writer. And I kind of don't want to give too much away from what's going on there, because a lot of that's going to have to do with the fallout from the Metal Virus saga. But she's got some really exciting plans for that, and some really exciting new directions to go. But if you like Ian, like I do, you'll hopefully be excited that at that same time, he's going to be launching a new series called Sonic the Hedgehog, The Bad Guys. Jack Lawrence, who used to draw Lost Light and has been drawing Sonic for a while, he's coming in on art, and it's going to be focusing on some of the Sonic's villains, again, sort of in the wake of the Metal Virus saga. It's a great place to jump in, though. It's just these villains sort of regrouping after this massive world-shaking event. And it's going to be, we will have both of those coming out monthly, beginning in September. And I couldn't be more excited to have double the dose of Sonic for a little while.
I see there are a couple other Sonic questions that refer to things that maybe have more complications to them than we can necessarily talk about here, but just in order, the answers to those questions are no, yes, and wait and see. But no, we appreciate and love all the Sonic support and the passion that the fans of all the different iterations of Sonic have shown. And yeah, I mean, there are, in addition to these things here, there are other things that we can't yet talk about that we're also very excited to be pursuing on behalf of Sonic. So, the proverbial more to come on that one. Let's see, a question that I won't dodge as much. Are there other video game franchises that will have comic tie-ins you can talk about? There's nothing immediately in the works, although I will say that if anything has come out of the past few weeks of lockdown at home, it's that I'm under threat of death, that if there is not an Animal Crossing comic, my daughter's never going to talk to me again. But considering she spends about 12 hours a day playing the game, she's already not talking to me a whole lot. But the video game franchises are always fun to play with. We've done our share in the past, Metal Gear and Castlevania and Silent Hill and others. And so they're always fun things to look at. And so, yeah, I mean, there's nothing to announce here, but, as we do with all the licensed things that we evaluate, we see not only what makes good sense, but also just if it's something that we have an affinity for. So luckily there are a lot of gamers in the office, and those conversations are taking place right now. So hopefully there can be some actual announcements to come.
Yeah, I guess Read Only Memories was an underlooked gem. It was I thought a really comic that came together really well, that I'd recommend checking out if you like Sonic. Well, if you're an adult who likes Sonic, there's some bad language in there. Chris, I don't know if this is a leading question or not, but are IDW comics going to be sold at the Smithsonian museums?
That's a good question. Yeah, so last year we announced a partnership with the Smithsonian to do a number of different initiatives, graphic novels, some nonfiction books, some coloring books, some other types of things along those lines. And the plan certainly is to not only have those available everywhere in bookstores, comic shops, but also through the different Smithsonian museums. So yeah, I mean, that one's a very fun partnership, because not only are the Smithsonian museums some of the best curated and just best museum experiences you can have, but you know, having their experts directly involved in these books really helps us kind of further one of our initiatives, which is telling good, important, compelling nonfiction stories. So it's something we're very excited about. I think the coloring books that we're doing, a couple of them will probably lead the onslaught of Smithsonian books to come, but that's probably the amount of detail that we can give right now. But I think coloring books are great, not only for general purposes, but certainly, as we've seen, like the time period that we're in right now, this situation we're all living through, coloring books and puzzles have been a couple of the ways that people have kept their wits about them. Like we have a Beauty of Horror line. There's a line of coloring books called the Beauty of Horror that creator Alan Robert has run for us. And those books have been just sort of flying out of the virtual stores right now as great diversions for people. Alan has a fourth Beauty of Horror book, as well as a tarot set and a journal and some other things tied in with that brand coming out later this year. So yeah, I mean, not to segue from one question onto another thing, but I think the coloring book question in general is answered in some really interesting, fun ways by this kind of content. And, you know, we've done other coloring books besides. And so I would, again, like coloring books, games, puzzles, those kind of things, all of which we have made in various forms, are great diversions while you're looking for non-Animal Crossing types of things to do at home.
Yeah, I was stunned by how hard it is to get puzzles right now. I was talking to one of my neighbors, you know, from a safe distance a few days ago, and she was trying to order some puzzles, and so like I think like while it was in her cart, some of the stuff sold out, and it's seen some incredible prices on certain ones. So yeah,
when I saw Sir Patrick Stewart do a video talking about how he does puzzles, and then he takes the puzzles and he frames them up, I was like, well, puzzle sales are bound to explode even more now. I bet it's kind of one of the, not fun, because none of this is fun, but one of the interesting outcomes of this whole thing is just seeing that celebrities and everybody experiencing this are experiencing it in similar ways, no matter what they're setting. You know, they are looking for ways to sort of keep their mind occupied on kind of interesting, mundane things like puzzles and games and all of that, in the same way we all are. And so it's kind of been a fun thing to see that it's brought everybody kind of onto a more equal footing in some ways. So, you know, maybe owing to his interest in puzzles, we might have to do a next generation puzzle at some point for Sir Pat.
Hey, sounds good to me. Let's see. Here's the next one. Can you talk about the different challenges and rewards between working on licensed comics versus creator-owned series? Yes, we can. The next question is, yeah, I don't know. Do you? I mean, honestly, I love working on both, and I think the trick for me on both of them is when you get creators who care deeply about the stories that they're telling and the characters they're telling those stories about, and you know, to a certain degree, once that sort of clicks in, it's weird to say, but it doesn't matter that much, you know, as much if something's creator owned or licensed. And there's different kinds of comics, and there's different you know, different ways a licensed comic can work. You know, or a creator owned comic can work too. That sort of, you know, create different setups or different paradigms for the way, you know, the way people are going to approach it. But I guess, you know, I like the stuff that drove me to things, like, as I mentioned earlier, it was like Ninja Turtles. You know, it was there's this sort of creative freedom. You know, when I was first kind of deciding this is the way I wanted my life to go, or you know, hoping my life would go something like this, it was the stuff that it was self-publishing. It was creator-owned comics that were really driving me, because at least at that time it was comics were one of the only places where if you wanted to go out and say something, you kind of could, you know, you just needed paper and a pen, and printing comics wasn't impossible, you know, and just getting comics into shops by yourself wasn't impossible. Then when the web came along, that's actually where I, you know, kind of really started stuff up, was putting my stuff up online. And there was no, you know, there wasn't a barrier to that. So I've always loved that. That's always been a really important thing to me. But then at the same time, like personally, the stuff I've spent the most time, you know, writing and working on has been Transformers. And I felt that was like incredibly fulfilling, you know, personally, and meant a whole lot to me, that, you know, then and now. But yeah, there are definitely different individual challenges on it, though, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, with the license stuff, there are different required levels of approval. Sometimes there are parameters that mean you can't just take a story in any crazy direction you might want. But I also think that's not a detriment. You know, I think having parameters and rules is the same thing you want with a story. You want storytelling rules established so the story can't just go anywhere and not make sense. And I think working on licensed comics, offering that same kind of approach is fine. You know, I don't want a Transformers comic that is so adult and mature and violent or profane that kids can't enjoy it. So I want to be able to take a license and fit within those parameters, but also tell a story that maybe hasn't been seen before, or puts a different spin on those characters in an interesting way. And in that, it's not a whole lot different than a license thing. I think I find a way to shoehorn ROM into every single conversation I have on a panel. And so as far as licensed properties go, ROM is the thing that I loved as a kid. And so for me, it was really gratifying at IDW to be able to finally get that back into the market in some form, just as it was gratifying to work with Brian Lynch and Nick Roach on something like Monster Motors, or Gabriel Rodriguez and Joe Hill on Lock and Key. Or on the license side, Kevin Eastman and Tom Waltz, and, you know, a great array of artists on Ninja Turtles. So in that regard, like John says, when the passion comes through and makes a compelling read, it doesn't really matter who owns it at the end of the day. Like, The Last Ronin is going to be Kevin and Peter and Tom and Andy, everything they want to do on paper, and the copyright holder it doesn't really make a difference. It's just going to be that kind of a compelling book. And so in that way, you know, like John says, I love to work on things that I loved as a kid, properties that I care about now, but also to develop new things, see things like Kanto come to life is equally thrilling. So I'd say they all have their challenges, but the rewards are kind of equal in the finished product.
Yeah. I mean, like, something like, you know, when we were working on the Gem comics with Kelly Thompson and Sophie Campbell, like those, you know, those stories were so personal and so kind of close to all, you know, all of us that were working on them, you know, Kelly and Sophie especially. Yeah, and the guidance that we got from like Hasbro, from our mutual friend Michael Kelly at Hasbro, was always great. You know, like it was really something. It was a real benefit to having that. And you know, I feel like those stories, like there's stories that have meaning. You know, we just did. God, it feels like a couple hundred years ago, but it wasn't too long ago that we did a writer's room for Star Trek Year 5, for the second half of that series. So all the writers, myself, Chase, the editor, we all went up to a very secret location in Los Angeles and just met and we're working with everybody at Trek and talking about what the last year of that series was, or, you know, it was going to be, like all the different stories. And we kind of go into this on the Trek panel a little bit too, but like just something like Star Trek means so much to so many people that when creators like Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly and Brandon Easton and Jim McCann and Jody Hauser, like all get in there and get to work on it. These are stories that have meaning to them, that's had meaning since they were kids and since Star Trek, you know, first attached itself to them. And what's really cool about kind of working in this industry in the present day is, like, that's true of everybody that works on Star Trek. You know, like on the CBS side of things, they're all there because they love Star Trek a lot. And you know, it isn't like I imagine things were in, you know, like 1950s licensing, or maybe even probably 1980s licensing, where there was a lot of like It's just a, you know, it's a little metal toy. Just do whatever you want with it. You know, have fun, whatever. Just make us money, sell a product. And that's not how anybody approaches this stuff. Everybody comes at it from this point of view that even the reason we're working on those things is that we grew up with them. You know, so that has a lot of meaning, you know, to everybody, I think. And then, you know, but again, like Chris said, man, I love developing new stuff and getting new voices out there and seeing new, you know, brand new concepts and new creations from like creators I love, but then also to seeing brand new faces come in. And you can kind of see something sometimes where it's like, you know, maybe this isn't perfect, but there's so much passion behind it. This is still good. This is better than perfect. You know, this is there's something to it. And yeah, I really love finding that and reading it.
Yes. All right. Let's see.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell us more about the upcoming Rob Liefeld series, Snake Eyes Dead Game?
Again,
John,
yes.
I'll let
Yes.
I'll let you answer that. But I would also say Rob Liefeld, who's the creator on this book, recently did a podcast, the Word Balloon podcast, and spent 2 hours talking about his approach to comics and art and his passion for everything. And he talked about Snake Eyes a lot on that podcast. And just if you want to hear it straight from the person who's making this book, Rob talks faster, more passionately, and more just emotionally about the importance of Snake Eyes in his life and his development as an artist than I think anybody else ever could. So I would say, if anything we say here gets you interested in this book, go listen to that podcast too, because it's always interesting to listen to Rob emote and talk about things he loves.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Rob, and I'm sure I've told the story on panels before, but like we actually used to go to the same art supply store. I used to go in when I was in high school, and I'd go in to try to buy my Hunt 102 pen nibs, and they'd tell me no, Extreme Studios is just in, and they bought all of them. So it was there's always a sort of the I don't know, a little local thing about it. We'd run in, yeah, like I ran into probably conventions as I was kind of coming in and starting to do my own comics. But I've worked with him on a couple books before, and this one's you know, super excited to have this come together. I mean, I know Chris worked really hard to get this thing going, and it's just pure kinetic energy and action and excitement. You know, if you do listen to Rob, if you get a chance to talk to Rob, or you listen to the Word Balloon podcast, or anything that he does, there's I don't know, the sense of excitement and energy and passion toward the stuff is almost like physical, like just almost existing in front of you. It's great. It's hard to come off the phone with Rob without being you're pretty jazzed about what you're doing.
He loves comics and
Yeah.
will tell people that in ways that I don't see from just about anybody. Like, we all love comics, but nobody that I've seen exudes it with such sort of fervor and passion and energy and volume as Rob. And so I think all of those things are being poured into the pages of this book. And it's, you know, if you saw Major X or you've read any of Rob's work, like, you know what you're getting here. You know it's going to be high octane action, swordplay. He created a new, very interesting, visually interesting villain. It's great. Like, you know, again, like Snake Eyes is one of the characters that little Rob was inspired by and made him want to become a comic artist. So I think this is Rob's way of saying thank you to the character and to the franchise.
Yeah, no, and it's yeah, no, I mean, the story is a chase for an ancient sword, and you do Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, other characters are in on this chase, and it's gonna be, you know, yeah, super high octane, super exciting. Chad Bowers is writing the script for it. Adelsa Corona, who's like not only an amazing artist on his own right, but an amazing Snake Eyes artist in his own right. You should check him out online. He has some great pictures of Snake Eyes. He's inking it with Federico Blee, just doing astonishing colors. Really, really, I mean, just the three of those guys together. Rob, Rob's design sense and kinetic energy on the page. There's genuinely nothing like it. You know, there's genuinely there were decades of people trying to do that and never hitting what made that, to me, you know, cool and exciting and instantly it instantly draws you into that world and makes you want to live in that world for 22 pages or whatever. It's there's a quality to that stuff that I don't know. I really love it. I've always loved that stuff. So
I saw some pages that have a Norse god that swings a hammer too. So I'm not sure who that is, but
could be anybody.
But it looked interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll be out this summer. And yeah, very excited about it.
All right, let's go to you over there with the computer. Would a Sonic and My Little Pony crossover ever be possible?
Yeah,
John?
man, I will certainly say weirder things have happened. I think that'd be great. I mean, we do have the same editor, David Marriott, editing Sonic and Transformers. So I know he likes them both. I'm sure we'll get a Big the Cat meets oh gosh, he's just saying what Transformers character would have fit in there. But no, I mean, I think that'd be really exciting. Sonic's delightful. Transformers are wonderful. Be a good fit.
In the meantime, Sonic and My Little Pony was that question, but I mean, any iteration of these properties, I think, is not necessarily out of the question.
Sorry, you're right, boy. Sonic My Little Pony. Yeah, sure, definitely. No, I misunderstood. I'm sorry. Well, the thing that got me confused is we're doing the My Little Pony Transformers crossover, and that's what switched it off in my head. So Sonic and My Little Pony, that's pretty cool too. I like that a lot. But in the meantime, we do have that My Little Pony Transformers crossover, which is what messed me up.
Smooth, yeah.
Yeah. Just working this in here. Now, in the meantime, that series, if you want your ponies mixing up with something that isn't where ponies usually go, James Asmus wrote the I think the first and last issues of it to kind of set it up and bring it home. But within it are a host of short stories by like a murderer's row of Sonic. Well, no, actually, yes, Sonic creators like Ian Flynn.
Saved.
But also Transformers and Ponies creators, Sam Maggs, Tony's Fleeks, Jack Lawrence, Sarah Petri DeRocher, Casey W. Collar, Priscilla Tramontano. Just really telling this really fun story with the Transformers. There's a part in issue 1. It's not out yet, so it's a little bit of a spoiler, but there's a scene where Bumblebee and Optimus get pulled into Equestria, and they're in the middle of this big war, and they're falling, and then Optimus moves to save Bumblebee, moves to help him, like on the way down. And as soon as Twilight Sparkle sees that, she's like, "Oh, these aren't robots; these are friends," and like immediately gets that. Oh no, there's friendship in Cybertron as well. So yeah, that'll maybe tide you over till we can get to a Sonic MLP crossover.
Okay, wait, I'm going to give you a question of mine that allows you an equally smooth transition into something else that you're working on. What about a Sonic Terminator crossover? Would something like that be possible?
Oh gosh, how do we I'll go fast. I don't know. I was trying to combine the two catchphrases. Well, you know what, Chris? We don't have that, but here's what we do have. Transformers versus the Terminator.
A what?
Yeah, man, issue 1's actually out. You need to have gone to a comic book store.
We reopen these comic shops, yeah.
That one's it's written by our esteemed Sonic and Transformers writer. So editor, David Marriott. I'm co-writing the scripts, and then Team NT's Tom Waltz is helping us out on the plotting. Long-time Transformers artist Alex Milne doing the art, and David Garcia Cruz doing the coloring. For me, when this is something we talked about for a long time, just kind of casually, batted around. And then we were talking to our friends at Dark Horse about, I think, a totally different project. And this kind of came up as, an intercompany crossover that maybe we could do. And Hasbro was into it. And I was super into it. Part of the reason I was into it is going back to when I was a kid. One of my favorite like crossover comics was Terminator RoboCop by Frank Miller and Walter Simonson, which is like just a super fun comic that took the premises of both of those characters and I don't know, he's like just layered them on each other and built up into something that was a lot of fun and just a super nuts action comic with these heavy sci-fi overtones that both of those series have. And I don't know, so like to me that it was like, oh, you can do something really great with this kind of bizarre crossover, like a crossover where it was like ROM Transformers, like that totally makes sense. Like that's not even a difficult thing, you know what I mean? Like that all makes sense in that same world. When you have these ones with these sort of overlapping worlds, even though they both came out in 1984, they both are about sort of the relationships of humans and machines. But then David Marriott had this fantastic idea for the premise of it, of instead of a human coming back trying to be the last, trying to save humanity, or trying to save life on Earth from Skynet and the Terminators, if it's a Terminator that comes back in time trying to save Skynet and the Terminators from the Transformers. To me, that turned both of those premises on their head, made it something really interesting, and made it something where you can really kind of delve into what makes people, whether they're metal or flesh, and
honestly, the three of you have done a really good job in treading the material between the two properties, where Terminator is, it's the more sort of dark and adult property of the two. And you've struck all those notes in a nice way, but also worked in a lot of the more, I don't know, sort of accessible or positive bits of the Transformers universe too, into something that feels wholly natural for both, which is always, that's always the most interesting kind of crossover, when it doesn't feel overly contrived.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Maybe I'll read these next two questions together, but now let's go one at a time. They both refer to some reprints of some classic material, but let's start with the Transformers UK. What is the status of the Transformers UK?
We've like honestly, I don't know when or if we'll continue with the UK reprint program as we had it. I know it's come up a number of times. There's certainly something I was enjoying. Honestly, I believe it got a little waylaid due to scheduling conflicts at one point, and then just kind of maybe fell off of something we were still doing at that point. We've definitely been talking a lot. Like me and David Marriott have talked a lot about getting some of the especially some of the key UK stories back out in places. You maybe see some of the stuff that at least in the US we've never seen in color. None of that. A lot of that stuff just has never come out anywhere. But there've been reprints of it in the past that we might be able to see some of the stuff, like I said, in color, kind of for the first time in a lot of the regions of the world, like where I am. It's definitely something that we're fans of here. You can hear me gushing to Simon Furman on the Transformers panel about how much I enjoyed that stuff. The funny thing I don't go into on that panel is I have no nostalgia for that stuff because I did not grow up with it. I didn't read that stuff till I was in my 30s, and it was still sort of the reaction I had was talking to Simon like that, because it was so much fun to read this stuff. It was for me, I grew up with the Larry Hama G.I. Joe. Like that was my introduction to kind of comics as a form. Like the Silent Issue was maybe one of the first times where I was like, wait, this isn't just there's something to this. Like what you could tell a story without the word balloons. What does that mean? And he'd do some other effects. He'd write some other effects in there, and because he was an artist, you'd think very visually on some of that stuff. And to me, that was a really effective thing. Again, kind of prior to me getting into Ninja Turtles, that was part of the origin of Young John. But for a lot of people my age in the UK, it was the Simon Furman Transformers stuff, because he'd be telling these wild stories where they were less tethered to the new round of toys, than some of the U.S. stuff that Bob Budiansky was writing, which is also, a lot of it was really super fantastic. Like, Budiansky just built this framework of Transformers, but some of the stories, like Target 2005, is one of the just an incredible story. Like, it's just so bizarre and all this time travel. So I would love to see that stuff continue. That's the roundabout way of saying we don't have solid plans for it now, but it's definitely something we talk about. I think we talked about it as recently as yesterday. You and I believe, on an email chain. So hopefully soon. That's the wrong way to get to. Hopefully soon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's other Transformers plans we want to discuss here or not.
Okay.
The ongoing series is doing its thing, but maybe Beast Wars has an anniversary coming up, if I'm not mistaken.
It does, yes, and that is something we want to maybe sort of talk about. Is I don't think we've talked about this anywhere. There'll be a new Beast Wars series coming very soon. I know more details about it. I know a little bit more about it than that, but we're not ready to tell anything. But yeah, it's going to be the anniversary of Beast Wars. I think that's it's such a huge thing worldwide. Beast mode, everybody knows what that means, and it would be exciting to come back into that world. Over the years, we've had a lot of the characters show up. I personally have given short shrift to a lot of those Beast Wars characters and stories I've written. Sorry, this won't be that. This will be genuine Beast Wars that I think a lot of people grew up with and a lot of people love.
I mean, that's kind of the cool thing about Transformers as a whole. There's the Beast Wars fans that are rabid for more Beast Wars, and the UK fans grew up loving that, and the fans of the main book that we've been doing, or all the other iterations. And so it's great that there's not only audiences for all of this kind of content, but also that there's the passion from the fans that want to keep seeing more of all of it. So which is
I mean, a lot of our Transformers creators, Beast Wars. I mean, for years, Beast Wars has been the stuff people grew up with. Like that was what introduced them to this world. Sorry, go ahead. I
was going to segue from one passionate fan base to the next, because the next question involves the G.I. Joe collections. Will the G.I. Joe collection hardcovers, both classic and the IDW material, ever come back into print? And the classic collections, I mean, we've done a number of those in different formats, in trade paperback and also hardcover form. I know they stalled out at various points because, we wanted there's the passionate G.I. Joe fans that help curate this content and sort of add context to it, had to withdraw from the project for a time. And so it's certainly things like the UK stuff that we're trying to find the smartest, best ways to revisit that material. So it's not necessarily an answer with any kind of detail behind it, but it is, they didn't stop because we didn't want them out in the world. And I know a lot of fans feel the same way. So, we're talking about the best ways to make that happen.
Yeah, we've got a couple one-off like comic book issues, reprinting a few of the key issues, like Snake Eyes Origin, and then we're gonna do one that has the silent issue, but it also has the issue 21.5 that only came with a limited edition toy. We reprinted it in one of the hardcovers before. So if you have the hardcovers, you have this material, but hopefully it'll let some new readers kind of discover how good that original, Larry Hama's original G.I. Joe stories were, and I mean, continue to be as he approaches issue 275. We've for anybody closely following this, we've not solicited G.I. Joe for or G.I. Joe Real American Hero for a little bit on like the monthly solicitations where we say what's coming out in the months. That has been purely an effort to just catch up. We've kind of fallen behind in the book, and we were just we just wanted to get stuff back out on time. So everybody's working on G.I. Joe right now, and the issues will be rolling out through the summer and into the fall as we move into some Larry post 275 is going to be delving into some special missions type stories, kind of getting into some of the the individual characters again. That's going to be the next story arc. The 275 culminates Snake Hunt, which has been a 10-issue story arc that involves every GI Joe character. And I just heard some of the plans or some of what's going into 275, and I think I was I was like, what? I couldn't believe what I was told, and I want to confirm it before I spoil it here because it was pretty wild. So I'm looking forward to that issue a whole lot.
I mean, Larry's a lot like Kevin, you know, that like a guy that we grew up reading and grew up loving the stuff that he did in comics, and now we're working with that guy, and he's still excited about telling GI Joe and telling stories in new directions and everything that he hasn't done over the last 3+ decades, and that's just an immense thrill. So I realize everybody's been very patient and very eager to get back to GI Joe, and we feel the same way.
Yeah.
And I know on the ongoing book, you know, the series that Paul Aller and Chris Evanwies are doing is also a book that people are very passionate about. And, you know, I don't know, John, if there's any details or spoilers you want to give there, but
No,
okay.
I'm kidding. No, I love that book. That when Paul's sort of pitch came in, it was fantastic. And then just the way he and Chris Evanwies, and they've done a number of series together. So I always kind of like that when it's almost like a band coming in, and this is their new album, you know, and they've done a couple series, you know, before. They actually teamed up originally on GI Joe. It was a GI Joe short story that they did together. Paul's just been he's an incredible writer. Chris is a super cool, really incredible artist. And issue 7 is kind of one of the most important issues that I think we've done, where it's Scarlet. I think the Joe team in general, but Scarlet especially, sort of dealing with post-traumatic stress syndrome. This story in this ongoing GI Joe story is that Cobra is basically one. GI Joe is underground. They're sort of they're pulling together. They've been pulled together out of sort of ordinary people who've been forced into this situation to rise up and join this special operations unit to fight against this Cobra threat that is just everywhere now. And they've lost some comrades along the way. If you've read the series at all, or if you check out issue 1, you'll know what I mean. But there's characters that just don't make it, and that has a toll on people. Then that's always been one of the hallmarks of the GI Joe, the comic book, I think, as opposed to like what you saw in the cartoon when everybody would like bail out of the planes just in time. Has always been about these are real people going into these situations. You know, they're real soldiers. They're people that know they're maybe not going to make it back, and they don't always make it back. And this issue especially is going to be delving into what that does to people. And Paul, I know, talked to a lot of experts. There's a bunch of people credited in this book, and it's as real as we can make it. You know, it's something I think a lot of people are dealing with, and honestly, probably going to walk away from the whole experience we're in right now. I think a lot of people are going to be affected by traumatic events. You know, not to get too down. It's still a awesome, fun GI Joe comic.
Yeah, sorry about those kids in the front row that just started tearing up, but we press on. Let's see. Can you give us any details about Lock and Key season 2? No, but I wish I could. Carlton and Meredith, the showrunners on season 1, who were carrying through on season 2, presented their plan to everybody, and it's amazing. Like, it's so much fun to see this one of the greatest comic series I've ever had the good fortune to be involved with, go from the page to screen in some noticeably different ways in some cases, but in ways that work very well for the TV show. And so to see fans gravitate toward it the way they have and embrace it the way they have and know what's coming is just like everybody. Like, I just want everybody to be able to get back to work because there's so much good stuff happening and coming. There's a couple other things with Lock and Key that I have been talking to Joe about and some other people about that I really hope come to pass. That doesn't tell anybody here anything today, but there's just a lot of excitement behind all of the different iterations of Lock and Key. if you've been following, and whether you're a fan of Lock and Key or not, if you're a fan of watching artists just make amazing art, the artist on Lock and Key, the co-creator, Gabriel Rodriguez, who is GR_comics on Twitter and Instagram, he posts a lot of his videos of his penciling and his inking, and the precision of his line and just the sort of amazing things he makes come to life with just what looks to us to be casual strokes is just so inspiring to watch. And so as we all try to find our path through this giant mess we're all in, getting pages and talking scripts and working with Joe and Gabe on the next issues of Lock and Key is one of the ways that I've really found to sort of find that calming place. We're in the middle of a 2-part series that'll be launching the summer, ideally still July, called Impale Battalions Go. That's set back in World War I. It uses some characters that we first saw in Open the Moon, which was the Eisner-nominated one-shot. Those characters also appeared in Small World. So if you want to go back and see who those characters are, those are the 2 one-shots to read. But the story being told in Impale Battalions is then going to lead into a crossover with DC Sandman universe that we've been wanting to do for years. Joe pitched Neil Gaiman on this idea years ago, and Neil was very excited about it. And so to see it finally be able to happen and to see these issues lead into it in a much bigger sort of story way is a thrill. Like, you know, Lock and Key as a series ended officially in 2013. And so here we are 7 years later, and there's new stories coming from the creators. And that is, you know, to me, it feels like we're on overtime with the property, where every bit that comes out is a thing that I savor and really appreciate. And so I'm glad that there's a lot more to come. Joe and Gabe have plans beyond even these few issues that are happening this year in the form of World War Key, which is a giant epic that is at least 2 volumes so far have been pretty well plotted and thought out. And so there's a lot to come. We're also collecting everything they've done so far, the 6 volumes of the main series, into one of those, we're calling it a Lock and Key, the Key House Compendium, but it's one of those giant, you know, 1,000+ page books that gives you everything all in one edition. Gabe did new front and back covers for the dust jacket. And so it's fun to keep finding different editions and formats and ways to present this material to people. We're also going to be doing a Spanish language edition of at least the first volume, and hopefully all of them, as part of a broader initiative that we have this summer and beyond, that is to bring Spanish language editions of many of our books to the North American market, which is perennially underserved, you know, Spanish speaking, Spanish reading audiences who number in the millions. And so this summer, we're going to lead with things like the George Takei graphic novel, They Called Us Enemy, and the first volume of Sonic the Hedgehog, which has a giant, you know, fan base across everybody, it seems. Red Panda and Moon Bear, the top shelf graphic novel by creator Jared Rosello. And then after that, Lock and Key will be produced in Spanish editions in the North American market. And so, like I say, if you have Spanish readers among you that want to be able to read the books in their native language, like, we will make a lot of our books available in that form. And so that's a very exciting thing to us. We're forever trying to find ways to reach all the parts of the audience that wants graphic novels, and this is a way that allows us to reach, like I say, an audience that has been underserved for too long. All right, I'm going to segue into another audience that has felt underserved for too long. And let's see, it's not really a question, but I'll allow it. Pearl Jam released a new album this year after a 7-year wait. We've been waiting almost as long for your Pearl Jam book. I mean, it hasn't been that long. It was that long for the album. Yeah, but Pearl Jam released Gigaton earlier this year. And we really wanted to have this art book we've been working on for 2 or 3 years now. It's basically taking the video that they shot that Todd McFarlane helped art direct back in the day for, God, why did I just draw a blank on the song? Do the Evolution. Sorry. So many books to discuss and try to promote here. But this Pearl Jam book has these amazing stills from this animated video that they did that have really never been seen. And so we have this gorgeously designed art book that was designed largely by Robbie Robbins, who was one of IDW's founders. And it's taken an admittedly long time to pull together, but it is really something unlike anything that we've done before. Like, it's going to be this large format hardcover that doesn't just present the stills, but it's stills and sketches and, you know, the lyric sheets and bits of remembrance from people that were involved in the video and all of these things in this really beautiful book that's finally coming this fall. So it would have been great to coincide with Pearl Jam's album, but now I think the book will hopefully coincide with Pearl Jam being able to get back out on the road. And so at any rate, that book is coming this fall. So yes, you have been waiting a long time for it, and I appreciate your patience. And I think Pearl Jam fans and, you know, fans of Todd and animation, all of those things are really going to love what this book is. All right. I think that brings us to, I think this is our last question that I can see. And that is, which convention do you most miss the most this year? And I mean, I think our answer is probably the same as everybody, and that's the conventions that allow us to get in front of audiences and meet fans of our stuff and sit with creators and just see in person the impact that our books have on people. That's really always just one of the rewards of working in this business. You know, a lot of it is solitary, whether it's at the office or at our houses. You know, you're sort of head down getting books out and doing all the things associated with that. So to go to a convention and be able to sit with fans and see them, you know, tell Kevin Eastman or Joe Hill or whoever how much a book means to them and get it signed and all the things that conventions offer is, you know, big and small, it doesn't really matter. It's just, that's the stuff that I think all of us miss. But I realize that the only real way to answer that question on this particular panel is WonderCon, of course. WonderCon is a convention I miss the most. And if we do a virtual SDCC panel later this summer, my answer might change a little. But, you know, like all of these things, I mean, I appreciate the fact that we can do those panels when we're able to. And I appreciate even more, you know, doing things like this sort of in a vacuum and knowing that fans are just sitting at their screens in a setting that is certainly not as comfortable as being able to just walk around at a show and listening to us ramble on about these different projects. And so I just, you know, on my behalf, anyway, I want to thank all of the fans for participating, asking good questions, and thank WonderCon and all associated staff for, you know, putting this virtual panel and this virtual convention together, and, you know, giving fans the content that I think all of us are sorely missing and lacking right now.
Yeah, there's a kitchen appliance convention I really enjoy. I was really looking forward to seeing what the 2021 blenders were going to be like, but I guess your answer is probably a little better.
I mean, this stuff usually lasts longer. Blenders break after a year, but books sit on your shelf forever. So.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to get to see everybody again at these shows. It's really been, you know, it really is. It's something you see, like, it's not only, there are people that I consider to be some of my best friends that I only see at these conventions, and not having that. And there's also, you know, like just fans that we get to see every time. You know, there's and I really miss you guys. I hope you're out there watching this. Thanks for being there on all the conventions and for all the comics and stuff. And really looking forward to getting to see everybody again and see, gosh, sometimes it'll be seeing what you've been up to for a whole year or longer.
Yeah, I can't wait to see everybody's hair.
Yeah.
But anyway, seriously, thank you all for the support and the fandom and the kinship and everything else. And if there's anything we didn't get to, or if you feel like we ducked your question or anything like that, you know, call us out personally on social media, and we'll do our best to answer. And again, to the con, thank you, John. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure sharing space with you.
Absolutely.
Virtual space.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll hopefully see you all again soon. Thanks.
Thank you.